So we will call the meeting to order. Scroll down. Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. So starting with the call to order, we'll start with the commission members. Brandon Cruikshank. Justin Denardi.
Good afternoon, present.
John Hanson.
Present.
Myself is present. Bob Kuhn.
Present. Good afternoon.
And Josh Stone.
Aye, present.
Excellent. And from city staff, looks like we have Martin here. I don't see Steph. Mr. Lemke, Chris Fair, and Jeff Bauman. Do we have a police officer representing on the call?
Doesn't look like we have police on today.
Okay, I think I heard that they were changing who was doing that, right?
We were changing, yeah. The new officer has the appointment, but I don't see it logged in, so.
Okay. At this point in time, we're open for public comments. Any member of the public who may address the commission on any subject from the commission's jurisdiction that is not on this meeting's agenda. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussion or taking action on an item that is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on any item that is on the agenda, please wait for that item to be called. Any public comment? Not hearing any? Also, I apologize. Our liaison to the council is present, and I didn't address you either. And is this your last meeting?
This will be my last transportation meeting. In 2 weeks, I'll be retired.
Nice. Excellent. So moving on to new business, the first item is pedestrian advisory committee appointments.
Yes, we have pedestrian advisory committee appointments. We have one vacancy. I included the application and a little staff report from Martin. They're recommending Jay Wellman be appointed to fill that vacancy. If you have any questions, Martin will answer them.
Any discussion from the Transportation Commission? Is there a motion from the Transportation Commission, perhaps?
Should we accept the recommendation for Joe Willman to fill the vacancy on the committee?
I'll second.
Excellent. If there's no further discussion, we can go ahead and vote on that. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed to the motion? Excellent. Thanks, everybody. So on to old business.
Old business. At our last meeting, we talked about the regional plan. Sarah Dector gave us a kind of a brief update and let us know that the public draft review period would be coming up. I think I said that wrong. It's now open. I sent a link last week with the agenda for you to take a preview, look at the regional plan, the draft regional plan. The Pedestrian Advisory Committee has reviewed the draft with staff, and they have chosen to submit comments individually as each commissioner chooses. And the Bicycle Advisory Committee decided to create essentially minutes of their discussion that is also in the packet for you to review and comment on. Sarah has a brief-ish presentation to kind of get us started with the discussion tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to her and find her file and then turn it over to her. I think it's this one.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Dector. I'm the Comprehensive and Neighborhood Planning Manager for the City of Flagstaff. And you'll see we walk around with this intimidating binder, which is actually only like a third of the way full, but it's big because I keep all my notes in it too. But the draft plan is available for everyone to review. And so we visited with the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee over the last month. And what staff asked me to do today was just quickly run through some of the material we shared at the transportation workshop in November, so that the committee's up to speed. We've talked through this process with you before, so I won't go over this again. But I think this new revised planning pyramid is perhaps something we didn't have when we presented to you in October. It was probably still under revision. If you remember, the current plan has a triangle diagram like this called the planning pyramid, and there's been iterations of it over time. But one key thing about the way the current plan is designed is it's meant to provide a clearer distinction between content that will be used in the development review process and content that is supportive of staff and commissions and city and county departments in, working towards creating new code and new processes and new programs and helping direct funding. So I guess you'll call it the right side of the triangle as you're looking at it versus the left side of the triangle sort of makes a distinction. And you're probably familiar with how we've made this over time. Like the active transportation master plan falls on the left side of this triangle. It's a strategic and master plan. While the Southside Community Plan is a specific plan, it's adopted through additional review and process with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council in such a way that it is directly applied to development cases that are discretionary in nature, such as zoning map amendments and annexations. So that's one of those key distinctions, and hopefully this diagram makes that a little clearer. This streets master plan the city will be working on in the near future probably is another example of a left side issue. And as we talk through plan content, you may have questions about that. And as you're reading the plan, you may want to help us further make that distinction in the realm of transportation. The regional plan has 5 priority focus areas: mixed use, denser neighborhoods that support a variety of housing types and active transportation, and reducing community generated climate pollution and protecting air quality are 2 that directly relate to transportation. The goals and policies are in a separate section than all the other background material and the staff-centered implementation guidelines. That is because the policy section of the plan is what we imagine being that right side of the triangle, and the implementation section is for the left side of the triangle. And that's part of why we've organized it a little separately. We're definitely taking feedback on the framework and organization of the plan, and there's different camps on this one. Some people like that you get all the most important stuff in the first 50 pages. And some people go, yeah, but the thing I really wanted to read was 40 pages later. So we would be interested in anybody's read on this and thoughts. The plan also identifies themes, which I don't think we had to share with you last time. Active transportation and transit are one of the themes, as is climate action and equity, which all show up in the transportation material in the plan. I think we went over these last time of the distinctions, but I just wanted to put up here that the policy section has goals, policies, and land use categories. And so that means that those categories for transportation are broken into sections for transportation systems, which is about networks within the transportation system, multimodal transportation, so specifically bike ped, and micro mobility and many other kind of things that maybe don't always fit the bicycle and pedestrian categories, and then transit, the airport, and freight and rail. And then there are sections on streetscapes and parking that only apply within the city. The county doesn't really have a managed parking situation in Belmont, so having a parking goals and policies, they just have parking. They have maybe some trucking issues, but that probably falls under freight and rail as opposed to streetscapes and parking. The implementation section has guidelines and action items. And it's easy to go through all of these things in our interactive document platform. So when you go to the website, and the members of the commission still have until December 19th to leave comments, you'll see that there are actually already a lot of comments in the transportation chapter and on transportation goals and policies. In total, we did the first like pull and examination of comments on November 19th. It includes all the ones we've had at a workshop. And I think we've had almost 80 people provide comments on the document, and there have been 462 comments produced in the first half of the 60-day public review. So that's a good first half turnout. Now the second half of the 60 review is during the holidays, so it might take a little more work, but also there may be people who are still trying to get through the 200 pages and read it. But if you go to this platform and you pull down here, it'll let you see all of the chapters. If you click this button and ask it to show you the comments, it'll show you your comments, it'll show you other people's comments, and you can up and down vote comments, and you can also comment on other people's comments. So that, being commission members, that may be of interest to you. You can do so anonymously, or you can look at it in another way. Oh, sorry. There are several policy maps for the transportation chapter. There is the road network illustration, which you're kind of familiar with from last time. There is the future and existing Flagstaff urban trail system. There are enhanced and grade separated crossings, and there are I forgot, bikeways by type. Those are the policy maps. So those are maps that are required, but actually show where we intend to build this infrastructure in the future. The implementation section has some informational maps that are not policy maps per se. Transit is one, like the map of our current transit routes and stops is something that might change over time, but we don't necessarily consider that a policy map. We have discussed whether the permanent transit network should be included on a different map, like the road network illustration or something along those lines as well. So these three maps so far in the draft plan haven't seen a lot of changes from the current plan, but staff is looking at them again during the 60-day public review, because there have been some different development proposals over time and some different studies of the road network in some of these areas that they wanted to include and update. And if we make changes to the road network, we want to make changes that might pass through to all these other maps as well to make sure they're still integrated. The difference between the current road network illustration and the one that's proposed in the draft plan is that the current plan's road network illustration kind of melds together a land use idea of having areas be commercial corridors and the road alignments. So we've kind of pulled those two things apart again. And in the future growth illustration, you'll see there is a land use category that is applied to some parcels that have frontage on an arterial or collector called suburban corridor or urban corridor. That is not a category we applied to the roadway, but to parcels that front that roadway and are primarily going to be commercial or multifamily. So that's kind of mixed together in the current plan, and you'll see this map pulls those apart a little more. And like I said, staff's looking at them again and doing double checking and testing them, and so they could be further revised. A map we carried forward but changed a little bit from the current regional plan is Great Streets and Gateways. Great Streets, not to be confused with Complete Streets, is an idea that we have in our current plan. It's about roadways, but it doesn't appear in the transportation chapter. So I think some people interested in the topic of transportation didn't even realize it was there over the last 10 years because it was in a chapter called Community Character. And that chapter doesn't exist in the current plan. We took the parts of that chapter that were useful and we spread them out into other parts of the plan. And it really just says there are great streets and here they are. And then it doesn't really tell you too much other than they should be pretty cool. That's kind of how I would summarize the current policy on great streets. But we have been able to take the language about them having enhanced visual quality and enhanced landscape design and taken that into some of our partnership planning, like the corridor plans for Milton and 180, and use that to have a conversation meaningfully about what the frontage improvements look like along these roads. And so we decided it was useful to retain this idea that some roads in the network are not just your standard cross section, but also have some enhanced community oriented design that is focused on the experience and visual appeal of the roadway. So like a good example I could think of would be the work on Butler Avenue is not only going to improve the roadway in terms of making sure we go from asphalt dirt transition to actually having sidewalks and parkways and other things, but for portions of Butler, it's also going to make the whole road more cohesive and less fragmented. Beaver and San Francisco Street are two examples of roads that from like Butler to Forest Avenue actually have a lot of different cross sections. Doing great street kind of design work on those roads in the future, which we might have the opportunity to do after the Lone Tree overpass is built and the traffic counts on those roads might lead us to make some changes, means we might be able to have something more cohesive and less fragmented and better transitions for different modes along those roadways. So that's the kind of thing that something being marked a great street would trigger, is that we're going to kind of head in that direction as we do the revisions and retrofits of these roads over the next few years. Transportation is also integrated into the land use chapter, so it's worth opening chapter 4 and reading the category guidelines. What you see here is some of the illustrations. The current plan is what I call architecturally agnostic, which means it doesn't tell you what these buildings should look like, but it definitely tells you more about what the public sphere and the public improvements around buildings should look like in different settings, which is actually what the city has a lot of control over. And we do have architectural guidelines, but we decided to kind of be sparse on them in the illustrations in the plan in the hopes of seeing how they might evolve over time, especially considering the housing affordability emergency that the city has declared and the climate emergency. Maybe there's different materials or maybe there's different affordability considerations that we have to look at with architecture. And so we didn't fully architect out the buildings, but I think you probably know as the Transportation Commission that the roadway that is designed in this photograph doesn't meet any of our current standards, right? But it is a very visually appealing, activated urban roadway. And I think lots of the transportation staff and the planning staff can see a path of how we get from, you know, the two directional left turn lane, or as the lay people call it, the suicide lane, and a bike lane on a very wide road to getting something that is more multimodal in nature in places that we'd like to see more urban activity. But the Transportation Commission and the staff are going to have to do a lot of code updates to get us from A to B here. This is more like A to L. So the plan sets some big aspirations for transportation in that way. And so hopefully as you're reviewing it, you're thinking of how that work might be laid out before both the citizen volunteers and advocates and staff for the city. We had some workshops and I just left these in here, but in addition to transportation, we had an environment and recreation workshop, a land use and housing workshop, and one that was focused on infrastructure more broadly and safety. We have a closing webinar tonight, right after your meeting. So if you'd like to get the 101 summary that Elsa Erling is rapidly preparing on what is in those 462 comments that we've downloaded so far, we're going to start that tonight, and the link is on our website. We will post that to YouTube afterwards. We also have 2 more office hours coming up. They are kind of on the exterior of the community. One is on Belmont Fire Station, which we will be out there for 3 hours we're there from 11 to noon. So 11 to noon 11 to 2 p.m. on Friday. And same on December 13th, we will be at the Summit Fire Station on Cokefield Road. After we're done with this 60-day public review, we have a pretty quick timeline to turn a draft plan around to go to a retreat with the City Council and the Board of Supervisors, which I am starting to work on finding the availability and dates for that. It's a pretty tight timeline, so if we can't get dates in the window that we need them in, then we might have some adjustments to our overall timeline. But the goal is to get this on the November 2025 ballot, and if my fallback is March 2026. Like if we can't make that because we just can't get all these awesome group discussions together, that's probably the critical path right now. Or there's an issue so big, we need to go back out and do more public engagement. That's another potential outcome. Like I said, we're only halfway through the comment period. That could set us back a month or 2. So these are kind of the steps in that process. The goal is that if we send it to November 2025 ballot, the city can adopt the plan, and then the county could begin their public hearings right away in November 2025 and have it adopted by January. So that's a pretty ambitious schedule, and why we are looking forward to getting everyone's comments before the holidays. So that is my sort of quick presentation. But if you've looked over the plan, and I know you've had a couple months to do so, and you'd like me to open it up or talk about any particular part of it, I'd be happy to. I'll just pull it up while you're thinking.
Thanks, Sarah. Are there any questions or from the commission at all?
I don't know if Martin would like to come up and talk about the work that the PAC and BAC have done.
So at their November meetings, the PAC and BAC were both given similar presentations by Sarah or some of our other colleagues, and kind of given options on how they want to go about reviewing the plan. The 2 main options being they could submit comments as individuals at their own pace or own time, which is what the pedestrian committee elected to do, or they could discuss it as a group and come up with a set of group comments, which is what bicycle advisory committee decided to do. So in the time since their November meeting, the Bike Advisory Committee had 2 special meetings, one to actually review and discuss the plan and come up with comments, and then a second meeting just last week to approve the minutes, the first meeting. So what you have in your packet is those minutes that were assembled by Bike Advisory Committee. They did a lot of the work really themselves. They all individually reviewed the document, came prepared to their special meeting, prepared to discuss it, and then one of the members wrote up those minutes. Since they are advisory to the Transportation Commission, we're presenting them to you before we send them on to Sarah and her staff as official comments. So at this point, if you've read through them and have any questions or comments, we'll note those and add them as well to that official record to send to comprehensive planning.
While you're thinking about that, I think the Transportation Commission has the same options of individual or group comments, of course, but the 60-day review period is over in 2 weeks. We still have 2 full weeks left, so it's pretty tight if we want to do a regroup like Martin did with the BAC, but we could figure out how to pull that off, especially if it's virtual only. But so you have both options, but time is really getting short.
This is Bob. I would suggest we do individual then with the time shortage input in there, if that's okay with everybody.
Um, yeah, Bob, I think that sounds like a pretty good idea to me as well. I certainly applaud the Bicycle Advisory Committee for their efforts and putting together a group conversation. But with the time we have, it seems like that makes sense.
So I would suggest that is it's a limited time, and especially around the holidays.
Maybe one thing I could do to help kind of generate some conversation here is bring up a really nerdy transportation topic that I know has come up in the public engagement. So I said the plan is kind of architecturally agnostic. It doesn't say like put bricks on your building or make it pretty. It just says buildings should be functional. They should get these outcomes. We're a little bit like that with transportation measures too. In that we really focus on outcomes. So safety really reads as the number one priority for transportation, is that we've got to deal with vulnerable road users first as the highest safety priority, and then other transportation issues become secondary. And that is a big shift that, in fact, you will notice. And I even had somebody say, somebody who's in the transportation like advocacy world said, you don't have any definition for level of service. And I said, well, we never say the words level of service anywhere in the plan. It's absolutely silent on that. And that is purposeful to let the transportation community have a conversation about what purpose does level of service as a measure serve? Is it the measure we still want to be using for successful transportation projects? And is it penultimate still, or is it something we're going to be reconsidering in the next 15 or 20 years? And that is because of the big shift conversations that sustainability and the city council and transportation commission have been having, is to kind of give some space there. But we also still have plenty of partner agencies, and even our own code still has level of service direction for staff. And so that is we are purposely making a void, and maybe it's creating a conundrum. And we'd love to hear any thoughts on that. That definitely falls right in conversations you guys have on a regular basis. How does it make you, what do you think? Is that the right approach? Is there other things we should be considering? Do we need kind of a caveat? Those are the kinds of comments that, with the position you all sit in and the conversations you have on a regular basis, I think would really be, even if you're commenting individually, the way you can add value to the comment period. You don't have to share any thoughts if you don't have any right now, but I just wanted to stir the pot a little.
So in place of the level of service, can you talk a little bit about what measures would be used then for determining roadway design layout?
Right. Well, so certainly the plan talks a little bit about VMT. And then it also talks about considering safety measures. And I know David Lemking, Chris Fair are working on evolving the annual crash report to have a high injury network. And while that isn't called out, that's the kind of safety measures that would start driving the decision making more. Not that we would never use LOS. There might be some role in it as a measure, but it might not be the only measure we're worried about meeting. Is that a good way of describing the cognitive shift that the plan revision is kind of pushing towards? Would you add anything, Jeff?
No, I think that's a good way to describe it. It's what is the mix of measurements that we want to use going forward. I think it's oversimplified to say we only do level of service now. I know that's not what you said exactly, but that's what I hear people say from the public, and that's certainly not the case. You guys have seen projects with evaluation matrix. There's a lot of things involved. Level of service is one of 7 or 8 different things. So maybe the regional plan is catching up to what we're actually doing, but not what's in our code in some ways. So yeah, no, I think that's a good discussion point. We actually don't get into that very often here with the Transportation Commission, so it's not a super familiar concept probably for most of the commissioners, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, and we do have some indirect level of service direction in the current plan, which, well, when we first adopted it, it didn't work or do anything meaningful. And then Jeff and Dave Wessel and I and some other folks revised it. And then it was kind of meaningful, but it still didn't get used a lot in the current plan. So that plus kind of this shift of that level of services, I don't know if it's going to go away, but it's definitely its importance is being over time reconsidered meant we pulled it out for now. So just food for thought.
Yeah, no, it's certainly interesting. When I think about the level of services and the metrics and I think a lot about, I mean, primarily about the quantity of traffic, right? How to handle volume and measuring the efficiency of the roadway system as well. So in addition to the say, I'm just kind of curious if we're not using level of service to quantify that, then what are some of the metrics that would then be used as a replacement?
I don't know that there is a direct replacement, so it's not, there's not a linear replacement, at least that's the way. Yeah, there isn't really a linear replacement. So it's a hard concept to think about when you're trying to design a facility if you don't care how many people are traveling on or how long it takes them to get down it. So I don't know that we're gonna get there, at least not very soon, where we don't even care. But there's other things. I mean, think about like the evaluation matrix that we've seen for like the Butler and Fourth project. We looked at safety and we looked at, I can't remember exactly what we called them all, but we looked at like a ped comfort and a bike comfort. And we looked at safety. We probably looked at cost. So that those are some of the things that you would look at when you're thinking about how you're evaluating a project, how you're designing the elements of the project. I'm sure there's others that have come up in discussion, but those are the ones that are quickly coming to mind.
Yeah, I think that plus the place, the last plan did say that we were going to improve mobility, right? I think that was the language it used. People often read that as reduce congestion. This draft does not ever say we are going to improve mobility. It says we are going to manage congestion, which is different than improving mobility or reducing. So it's saying congestion may hold steady or decline and be a little worse, but we're going to try and improve all these other metrics as we're making those decisions. So it becomes part of a trade-off instead of being, the driver, which it hasn't been as much in the last few years, but I think traditionally there's been periods of time where it drove decisions on widening and other things. So we're trying to, the master streets plan is really going to have to dive into some of that a lot more, but that's kind of where the direction heads, at least for what we've written so far.
Long discussions to come.
Yeah, there's already been some long discussions and there's more to come. Yeah, so it's not resolving something, but it is kind of opening space for a change in our decision-making process and our evaluative processes, which you already have good leadership on, starting to get that to really be data-driven, but we're opening up the policy space to give us room to maneuver.
Sarah, has Metro Plan been involved in this process at all?
Yes, Metro Plan provided well, their biggest time commitment, I think, to the regional plan, besides just reading goals and policies and attending the committee meeting for transportation, has been that they actually did the transportation modeling, and Chris was reviewing that too when we were doing the scenario planning. So,
Thank you.
yep. And then, of course, Mountain Line has been involved too. Estella Hollander has been the main person reviewing, but I know we'll be continuing to work with them.
That's probably what we have for you to kind of prime the pump, to take a look at the document. Feel free to reach out to me. Sarah's the expert. Excuse me. Or Sarah, of course, the expert, reach out, but and then there's also obviously the public standard way to submit comments. So you have 2 weeks. There's a big document.
Yeah, if you just click on this part of the website, you can look through. And as I was saying, you'll probably want to go to the transportation chapter and take a look at the comments. You can see there's already quite a few suggestions through here. It keeps going. So it might just be interesting. You might not want to make comments on the website, but you might want to look through what comments people are putting here because it's a pretty open format. The transportation goals and policies are in chapter 3 too. So just to remind you, I put that on a slide, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to, I can't say I look forward to reading 200 pages, but I look forward to reading the information and being able to provide input on it.
Okay, that was regional plan. We are moving right along tonight. We are on to informational items, commissioner discussion, and then we have a little bit of a chat about the 25 calendar. So I'll give you a chance if there's any commissioner discussion first, then I can give you some information on the BAC coordination.
Do we need to take an action or do something with the pedestrian advisory committee's comments, or that's just,
They're gonna flow through if you didn't have comments or any changes to them. So sound like we were good. Yeah, we didn't make that a formal action item. It's okay. Keep it simple. So let me jump into the calendar one. We can always go back to commissioner discussion if somebody comes up with something. So the way our calendar sets up is we have bicycle advisory, well, we have transportation commission on the first Wednesday of the month, which is usually before the first Thursday of the month. Sometimes it's not, but usually it's before the first Thursday, which is bicycle advisory committee. I think I might have said that wrong. Transportation commission is Wednesday. BAC is Thursday first. And the pedestrian advisory committee is second Thursday. And often, and the way this rolls, of course, is those two committees report to the commission, just like we just talked about for the regional plan comments. And when we've had capital projects, it's been tricky to coordinate the BAC to see it first, which would be like the day after our meeting. And then, so we get kind of out of sync. So we're looking at moving the bicycle advisory committee and the pedestrian advisory committee from the first and second Thursdays to the third and fourth. Correct. And that way they would always fall a week or two. Well, they would be either right behind or like the week prior, depending on how the month's laid out. The idea being that they would be the couple weeks before to solve that issue. But in any case, third and fourth, and then we would happen on the first, which would be like a week later or 2 weeks later. I said that wrong. But, looks like rooms are available. Yep, you guys have checked rooms. Rooms are available, so I think we're going to try to make that change. Talking to the commissions at their next meetings, which one of them is tomorrow and then next week, to see if that works for them as far as kind of personal schedules. But we looked at holidays, they looked at rooms. It's, there's probably a Thanksgiving issue on one of the Thursdays, but we always have 4th of July and New Year's different issues anyways. So, but don't think it's going to cause any problems. So just want to give you a heads up. I couldn't imagine that wouldn't be a good thing for us, but part of our discussion. Did I miss any points? Okay.
Great. Thanks,
We'll
Jeff.
we'll report back if everybody's good with that.
Yeah, I know we had talked previously about trying to shift our meeting, but it's more difficult with this room versus other rooms, I think.
Yes, this was hard. This is a lot harder to move back. So it's, Planning and Zoning Commission has the other two of the other Wednesdays of the month, and then I think someone else has the fourth one. So yeah, it's a challenge to move us around. Speaking of, our next meeting's February 5th, which will come pretty quickly with holidays. We had hoped to have residential traffic management and traffic calming discussion. This is a broader, just a program discussion. Now that we have had more recent experience with these projects, we think there's still more tweaks to make that program a little bit better. We're hoping to do it tonight, but we just weren't quite ready. So we'll have that ready in February to have a good, robust discussion, and we'll get you that information ahead of time so you can have a little bit of time to look at it. And that's what I have for you tonight. I guess we can go back to commissioner discussion or bounce to adjournment. Depends on how you feel, Mr. Chair.
Um, sure, yeah.
I just might point out two issues that the city council has spent a lot of time on lately that will be of interest to this commission. Specifically, as far as the Lone Tree overpass over the railroad track, we had some difficulty resolving the issue of the cement plant, which is right in the way of the road. And then also John Wesley Powell, council spent a lot of time negotiating details of, where it goes, the details of who builds what, and et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to say that at the meeting, I guess it was last night, we came to a resolution on basically all those things they just listed. So at long last, after a lot of work over a long period of time, we've got some resolution of those issues, and I feel really good about it. So staff and the legal staff and all of the staff, transportation staff, did a lot of work on that, and I want to thank them publicly for all the good work that they did.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun to get to last night. Yeah, we've been working on that for many years. Right. Yep. So I can give you a quickie update. So yeah, John Wesley Powell, the city council approved all the development agreements that set out who is dedicating what land and what land's being purchased and who's designing, who's building different pieces. One of the important pieces is we've got about 18 months is what we've set as each party to get this thing through design and under construction. So that's pretty quick for a city project. And there'll be 3 separate construction projects going on to build 3 segments, and the city's building the middle piece. So pretty cool. But yeah, we'll bring updates as we start to get into design. Design hasn't really started yet, but that actually council approved last night. We've already started working on design docs today.
Quick follow-up,
Yeah.
there's going to be a underpass for the Foots Trail under John Wesley Powell.
2 of them.
2 of them. Oh, boy.
2 Foots underpasses. Yeah, we'll go through that with the commission. Maybe we do that in February, give you a bit of a capital project update on that. And then you also mentioned Lone Tree. Yeah, just a quick update on that. I don't know that they're going to be doing, no, they won't. They will be starting in the spring. They're thinking February or March, you'll start seeing Butler, major traffic impacts on Butler and things getting started there. Rebuilding the Butler Lone Tree intersection and down Lone Tree first, and then we move to the overpass. So yeah, a lot will be happening soon. Thanks for prompting those.
Is there any commissioner discussion or comments?
You're about there.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to acknowledge the letter that the Bicycle Advisory Committee sent us and thank them for spending the time to do that. Yeah, I think it was unfortunate how the timing worked out in October, and we were excited to get something done, and we hadn't realized that they hadn't seen it yet. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that the shifting of the times will allow us to be able to collaborate closer. Another comment for other commissioners is that if anybody, it is nice to have somebody from the Transportation Commission as a liaison, for instance, to those committees. And I went to a number of them this past summer, but it's I can't always get to all of them. And so if anybody else is interested in attending either the bicycle or the pedestrian or both of those, I think it would be great to have somebody from this committee attend those meetings if possible. I'm not hearing any volunteers either, so
As you can.
they don't bite. They're quite a friendly group.
Can we wait until we know what dates those meetings will be now, since they're going to change?
No, I don't think we can wait. I think we have to make that decision now, Brendan.
It's Bob. I'll try to do the bike ones because I do a lot with bikes. So Jeff, just send me those the new dates. Okay.
We can do that. Do we send the appointments
Yeah.
out? We don't automatically, do we? To all the transportation commissioners, do they receive? No, okay. They get the agenda with the link. Okay,
Thanks, Bob.
yeah, we can do that.
You're welcome.
And I was on the pedestrian advisory committee for years, so I'd be happy to go, maybe not to all the meetings, but to those meetings if they work with my schedule. So
You're still welcome back as well.
I'm welcome back. That'd be nice.
Great. Thanks, Brendan. Yeah, and then, throughout the year, if Bob or Brendan, you guys can't make them, let somebody else know. Unfortunately, we can't email all of the Transportation Commission and let them know, but let somebody know, and word will get around eventually. And yeah, it'd be nice, even if we don't get to all of them, to get to more of them. With no further comment, then apparently I don't have to call for a motion. The meeting's just adjourned.
Good work.
All right, thank you.
Thanks all.